Hello everyone, welcome back to Let's Play Sonic 3 and Knuckles as Knuckles. In the last part we started with Marble Garden getting the Super Knuckles transformation in the process, then heading through the next two zones, Carnival Night and Ice Cap, and now we're in the final Sonic 3 Standalone stage, Launch Base. And an immediate difference is actually visible with Knuckles. In the Sonic version of this stage, the Death Egg was visible in the background, but since this takes place afterwards, it's nowhere to be seen. Nice detail there. Now, this is a stage that has its annoyances as Knuckles, just given that there's actually quite a few high jumps to make, but at the same time, they also plan around that by having so many required platforms that you need to use anyway. Also, I hate these Orbinauts. Those specific Orbinaut variants, I believe, only move when you're moving, which, kind of hard for me to dodge for some reason. This is also kind of a long stage, so it benefits from the whole super theme being replaced by just the Speed Shoes music. Otherwise, it got really annoying really quickly. That was just bad. Yeah, but Sonic 3 does have a couple of those little gotcha moments, and they're pretty notable when they happen because they can really shoot you right into danger. I'm trying to think of what Sonic game has the most of those little gotcha moments. For some reason, my mind gravitates to Sonic 2 Game Gear, but that's just because that game, partially due to screen crunch, partially due to level design, it can be a bit unfairly balanced towards the game trying to kill you. I forget how the Master System version of it plays out, because the level design is the exact same, just you don't have the screen crunch, and some of the sprite quality is a little better. Makes me wonder why I didn't play them on the Master System when available. I think my mentality was more or less just that they're all on the Game Gear, so might as well do them on the Game Gear. Now, this stage also has a couple of differences, depending on whether or not you're playing it in Sonic 3 or Sonic 3 and Knuckles. Actually most of them involve replacements of Dr. Eggman monitors, which just outright damage you in the game. There's very few of them in the game to begin with, and I don't think I ever hit one. In this playthrough, at least. I forget if I did in the Sonic playthrough. But in the case with Launch Base, they were all replaced with 10 rings. Kind of weird, but hey, I'll take it. Eggman monitors always felt like they were kind of out of place in this series to me for some reason, past, like, Sonic 1. Outside of, like, the multiplayers, of course. And I can't exactly place my finger on why, they just always did. Maybe it's just due to the fact that they're also very underutilized, because in the classic games, they very rarely show up. I can think of two stages they appear in this game. I think maybe one, if even, in Sonic 2, and I can't recall if they actually are in Sonic 1. I don't think they are. Now, for the most part, Launch Base Act 1, a lot of the level design that's available to you as Knuckles is still the same stuff that's available to you as Sonic. It's only towards the end of the stage where we start to actually see some unique stuff for Knuckles. Now, one change in particular I'm not a real big fan of, but I'll talk about that when we get to the boss fight. One thing I'll give Launch Base, though, I think it's a very good act in that it feels like it's taking you all over the place, which I mentioned before, I'm a really big fan of in general for Sonic 3, because it does that a lot. These little monitor things I just walked past, those basically alternate a door between open and closed somewhere else in the level. They're a bit of a minor puzzle element, but for the most part they just close off some maybe shorter routes or block you off from some rings, really. Either way, time for the boss of Act 1, which the immediate change between Sonic 3 and Sonic 3 and Knuckles, even though you couldn't access this in Sonic 3 Standalone without debug mode, the bosses were actually closer to the ground than the original. And it's this rotating spike ball robot again. This actually showed up as Sonic, but you only fought one of them. So I guess they figured Knuckles, the only way to really make it that much harder, given the way the fight works, is to add two of them. And to their credit, it's actually very easy, very hard to keep your rings in this fight. I don't think I've ever actually finished this fight with more than 2 rings ever. Once you get later into the fight, it does get a bit easier just because they lose one of their spike balls, but this is a fight that's always felt a bit odd as Knuckles. I think maybe they probably could have used a bit of a unique Act 1 boss there, but at the same time, I can see why that could be a potentially bad idea. I wonder what the longest anyone's ever kept that sign juggling going. I can assume it's probably for a long while, just given how it works. Either way, on to Act 2, which, similarly to a couple of other Knuckles-exclusive Act 2 level designs, is basically entirely underneath the Sonic Act 2, and I love that. It's so cool they were able to design 2 levels at once like that, while also keeping the same, like, stuff loaded in. Now, the thing is about this particular stage is that it's honestly pretty straightforward. There's water in the last third, but otherwise you're basically just going through a harder version of what you did earlier. There is a special ring here, and I actually forget if I find it in this footage, because I've always been so inconsistent on finding some special rings in this game. I think I'm about to find it, though. Yeah, there it is. The thing is with me and special rings is that, first off, I think there's some I still actually have not found in the game, just because the level design of this game, especially as Sonic, can be so widespread that finding everything is kind of hard to do. But also, a lot of the time I can't recall just because I rarely get emeralds in some of these stages. I cannot recall the last time I reached Launch Base Zone and didn't have the super form available to me as Sonic or Knuckles. It's been a while. I usually have every Chaos Emerald by the end of Ice Cap for a fact. Launch Base Act, the ring at the very start of Launch Base Zone Act 1 is usually the last one in the case I do reach Launch Base Zone without Aisle 7. Also, I'm completely thinking about this the wrong way. First, you'd actually climb this guy. Something I've always found a bit odd in general about Sonic levels, though 3 is also particularly guilty of this just because it takes place on an island, so at least makes sense, is that even outside of the water levels, a lot of levels still have water in it as an environment thing to make them feel more like actual environment. Whoa, that was weird. And admittedly, I'm a fan that they have water because that means there's at least very much more varying pathways. But at the same time, it also makes the actual water levels feel less unique. Also, the thing I'm completely screwing up on here, you just need to not roll into a ball when you roll up there. I always forget to do that. Always. Now, similarly to Act 1's ending being a bit different, Act 2's ending as Knuckles is a bit different as well. We're roughly near the same area where we fought Eggman in that wall mech, but since we can't jump into that platform, we have to roll under here and take the secondary pathway. This entire little tangent as well is a giant reference to the ending of Sonic 3 Standalone. You'll see exactly why in a moment. Well, we do have this nice little section here, just to get some last minute rings for in the case you die at the boss fight. Also, the thing I like about Sonic games, they usually give you rings before a boss outside of some of the specific acts. The first portion of this boss fight is the exact same as Sonic 3 and Knuckles as Sonic no matter what you do. You always have to fight this particular mech that's going up and down on various sides of the screen, firing lasers on the process. However, the orb is always protected, not the orb, the Egg-Mobile portion is always protected by a little spike ball. The orb is always on a set timer though. Depending on where and when you rise, it'll always be in the same place every single time. I think it takes 2 hits for the first 2 tiers to be destroyed, then it's just the last couple for the Egg-Mobile itself. This fight always felt kind of odd to me. I can't exactly explain why. It just kind of always felt out of place compared to some of the other Egg-Mobile fights. Don't get greedy in this fight, though. Always go for only 1 shot at a time. Just because due to that spike ball, it's very likely if you go for more than 1 shot, you're gonna get shot yourself. At this point, this thing actually can't even attack us outside of the spike ball, just kind of pathetically walking around trying to not get hit. Oh, it's only 1 shot with that, huh? Now, as Sonic, the act ended there. But as Knuckles, they're throwing in this guy. This is Big Arm, if I recall correctly. And if you're playing Sonic 3 Standalone, this is the final boss fight. This guy loves to grab you. In fact, if you get grabbed, he'll basically body slam you to the ground and damage you. And I think in Sonic 3 Standalone, that may not even knock you out of a super state. But he flies down at such an arc that when he's not doing this whole thing where he's at the top of the screen trying to slam down onto you, If you just time your jump correctly, you'll fly right into the Egg-Robo's center there and damage it. The top cannot be damaged because it has the spikes on it, obviously. And in Sonic 3 original standalone, this was probably actually the hardest boss fight just because, well, it's the final boss. It probably feels like it should be. I do like that they gave this boss 2 Knuckles, though, just to make his playthrough, again, feel just a bit more different than Sonic's. Not to say the hitbox can't be a bit picky with where you are, because I probably should have hit Egg-Robo there, but eh. The obvious other change, though, is the scenery, because when you're playing as Sonic, you're below the Death Egg right now, but since that's gone, not exactly going to be seeing that. I think this thing still takes 8 hits to go down, which makes, technically speaking, this entire boss fight potentially the healthiest one in the game. Assuming you count it as 1 health bar, not 2. But with that, that is the end of the Sonic 3 standalone portion of Sonic 3 Knuckles as Knuckles. But as you can see, we still got about 20 minutes left in the video. Yeah, we're going to be heading right on into the Sonic and Knuckles portion. Oh, hey there. Uh-oh. And the sound explosions are overlapping with each other so much that it's causing the sound to glitch. Welcome to Mushroom Valley Zone. And we are thrown immediately right into something, because when we just move forward a little bit, we find ourselves at a special ring that's going a bit more than one color. Welcome to the Hidden Palace. Right now, what's happening is that since we had all 7 Chaos Emeralds and entered this particular type of special ring, we lost the 7 Chaos Emeralds, but they unlocked these Super Emeralds. These are 7 more special stages that allow us to get another reward if we get all 7 of them. The reason we're still in this part for 20 minutes is because I'm getting all 7 of these emeralds in Mushroom Valley alone. There are, I think, like 8 or 9 special rings in Mushroom Valley. So it's very easy to get all 7 of them here, as long as you know where you're going, and since I do, I'm going to do just that. These are also notably the Sonic and Knuckles special stages, so if you played Sonic and Knuckles a lot, you'll have an idea of what you're doing. However, since you can choose them in any order you want, you also have a choice in your difficulty curve. I usually either go just pure right to left or left to right, but you can go in any order you want. Notable though, since we lost the Chaos Emeralds upon entering this Hidden Palace area, we can no longer turn Super Knuckles. So because now, for most of Mushroom Hill, wait, why have I been calling it Mushroom Valley? That's something else. Either way, because we lost that, we're going to be going to Mushroom Hill as standard Knuckles until we get the 7th Super Emerald, in which case things are going to be a bit different. Either way, Sonic and Knuckles, notably, also had an 8th special stage in its programming that never got used until Sonic Mania. The main setup was that it was essentially a giant square in the middle of the yellow type of orbs, which we're going to start seeing in Sonic and Knuckles, which jump you all over the place. I think they jump you like 4 or 5 squares forward, with some bumpers in the middle and some red and blue spheres in the center as well, with a ring surrounding them of bumpers, red spheres, and yellow spheres. But on the outward borders are 4 little groups of them that you just kind of need to go around the circle to get all of them in. And notably, we just got our first Super Emerald. And if you can't tell by the fact that I was flashing, that is a kind of a reddish Super Emerald. I don't know why they made them flash. Now, an interesting parallel programming-wise between Sonic and Knuckles and Sonic 3 Standalone is that each of them have a character that's not available, but there are some leftovers of their coding available. In Sonic 3 Standalone, Knuckles wasn't available to play, but some of his coding was there. Similar with this game in Sonic and Knuckles, there is actually leftovers of Tails' code in there. However, he is actually fully playable. Most of his sprites aren't there, but he's playable. I believe you just need to use action replay code to access him, though. Which, weird, but okay. Now, something I haven't talked about in the Knuckles playthrough at least that much, although I think I mentioned it a bit in the Sonic playthrough, but it's been so long, might as well mention it again anyway, is the debug mode. I forget exactly how you access it in Sonic 3 Complete. I want to say it's the same as Sonic 3 Knuckles. But the way you do it is, you can do it in technically either stage, theoretically, but in either Angel Island at the start of this stage where you had those rope swings, or in this stage whenever you have those little weird pull elevator things, when you're holding on to it, you want to press left, 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 right, 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 up, up, up. You'll hear a ring sound play. At that point, you can press A and return to the title screen. At that point, you can go down to the title screen and that'll allow you to access the sound test, which is also the level select menu. At that point, to enter debug mode, you need to head back to either Angel Island or Mushroom Hill, press left, 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 right, 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 up, up, up on those specific objects again, and you're in debug mode. Well, let's talk about these things one at a time. With the level select, yeah, it's the sound test, where I think there's also some exclusive sound effects depending on what version of the game you're playing. There's an interesting thing that the game does when you do the code the first time, in that it actually alters the game state to begin with. Like I mentioned, you can press start and A to head back to the title screen. However, pressing start, or pausing, and then pressing B causes the game to move in slow motion. And pressing C allows the game to move frame by frame, which is weird. The level select, every level is available. However, depending on the character you're selecting, any given character can only select their available stages. For instance, I believe accessing, like, let's say, in the game's coding, Lava Reef Act.3 technically exists. Which it does, that's where Sonic's boss fight is. Knuckles cannot access that. However, in the case you try to load into, let's say, Sky Sanctuary or Hidden Palace, you'll load that character's specific level designs, because they are technically different. Now, debug mode is a whole other beast. You technically actually have to access it by holding A while selecting a level in the level select code if you're doing, I think, the code the second time. But when you press A, gravity will actively reverse. In fact, the top of the level acts as a bottomless pit in case it's like an open air thing. Pressing B will allow you to enter edit mode, and pressing B and C will access through any available animation frames for your character. Edit mode, essentially, you can place down any given object that's in the stage. Namely enemies, though. You can cycle backwards and forwards through the list using, I think, A or an AC or something. C places objects, B allows you to go back to normal gameplay. It's really just for testers. But there is a particular notable monitor there that will make you enter basically a superpowered hyper state. Because I don't think it's exactly the hyper modes, but it's pretty close. Through debug mode, because you can move universally without managing to worry about collision, you can end up in character-exclusive areas, which, depending on what you do, might cause the game to freak out. Sonic 3 Knuckles, notably, also has both individual games' 8 special stages, be it the one where you go in a straight path just worrying about what's in front of you, or the one I mentioned a few moments ago. And while all that trivia only got me through 3 Super Emeralds. Part of me wonders if it would have been better just to get the Super Emeralds throughout the game as I went, but honestly, it makes the rest of the game not so short, but it makes the rest of the game just so much more streamlined that I figured might as well get them all now. Want to get that good ending after all. Though honestly, if I recall correctly, the good ending with Knuckles doesn't really change much. Mind you, not like Sonic good endings really changed much to begin with, but you know what I mean. That particular mushroom enemy has always been kind of a pain in my side, just given they technically have 2 hit points because you need to knock the mushroom off and then hit the monster themselves, which always just felt weird. Okay, this particular special stage is probably my least favorite out of the second set, because it's the most wide open, and very often what can happen is you can miss a group of 9 blue spheres or a group of 4 like that very easily, because compared to some other special stages where there's at least a fairly obvious pathway, this one's so wide open that finding your way around can be difficult. It doesn't help that in particular the yellow spheres don't exactly launch you to a new side of the map. They basically just loop you around to the other side. And that causes me to get a bit disoriented as to where I am. Because of that, we're going to be speeding up about a minute's worth of footage, because that's how long it took me to find the last 9 spheres. And as you might imagine, just given how the special stages work, where you slowly accelerate over time within these stages, by the end of the stage, I'm moving kinda quickly. Yeah, look at that. That's pretty fast. I hate that special stage. It's the one I never look forward to no matter what I do in this game, but thankfully it is over. Also, hearing the victory theme, I think I brought it up in the original Sonic playthrough. but to this day, I never really understood why they always brought back the Sonic 3 and Knuckles victory jingle. They never really bothered to bring back the Sonic 1 or 2 variation. Which, you know, I can understand because this is a good jingle, but I kind of miss the Sonic 1 and 2 one. Though I'd also really like to see if they can bring back Sonic CDs. Be it the Teleportation Yeah or the American version. Alright, this particular Act 1 boss is kind of easy. He just chops down the wood blocks at various altitudes, causing them to bounce differently. However, if you stand to the exact right, he can't touch you and you can damage him without a worry in the world. It's kind of a sad mini-boss, honestly. But with that, we're on to Act 2, which has quite a few more special rings for us, and also is admittedly a bit different from the start because we just crashed through the little door that Knuckles used to blow Sonic up to the upper portions of the level early on. I guess that's kind of how the game tries to tend to balance things. Act 1 is more or less the same with some minor differences towards the end of the stage as usually, whereas the Act 2s, you have a lot more access to unique level design for Knuckles. Usually, there are cases where that's just not the truth, obviously, but it's how the game seems to want to try and balance things. I never got the point of these chicken enemies, because they never really get a chance to actually outright blow you into things that will damage you. Usually just blow you off platforms and make you lose some routes. Seeing me hit that checkpoint reminds me, though, I don't think I ever talked too much about the bonus stages in Sonic 3 that much. I think I mentioned them briefly whenever they appeared in Sonic's playthrough. But essentially, the way it works is that if you pass a checkpoint when you have between 20 or 50, 20 or above rings, rather, you can access one of 3 types of bonus stages. Between 20 and 34 is the slot machine. I think we saw earlier on where I got a jackpot. Between 35 or more and 50 is the glowing sphere kind of pinball-y stage. And 50 or more is the kind of gumball machine type one. For the most part, they're just there to get you some extra rings or shields, but it's interesting in that they're also one of the easiest ways to get Super Sonic or Knuckles, whatever the case be, just because it's so easy to get rings in them. In terms of the slot machine one, though, the combinations for rings, 1 bar is 2 rings, 2 bars is 4, 3 is 8. 3 rings is 10 rings, 3 tails is 20 rings, 3 Knuckles is 25 rings, 3 Sonics is 30 rings, 3 Jackpots is 100 rings, and 3 Robotnik/Eggmans is losing 100 rings. Getting 1 Jackpot and 2 others gives double what it would be if the 3 others were collected, like Sonic and Jackpot is 60 rings. However, no matter what, Eggman is a universal 100 loss. Getting 2 Jackpots and 1 other of anything else quadruples that amount. For instance, Sonic and 2 Jackpots is 120, the highest possible payout out of anything. As usual, though, that does not apply to Robotnik. And the interesting thing is, it's also one of the easiest ways to get continues in the game aside from perfecting a special stage. If you enter a bonus stage with 50 or more rings, collecting 1 ring gives you a continue no matter what. I believe that's technically a leftover code from Sonic 1, but it's just overall pretty useful. On the glowing sphere kind of pinball-like stage, you have to try and reach the top while also collecting bubbles. Clear balls give you nothing, black balls bounce Sonic off of them. Pink 1-up balls are extra lives, blue B balls, which, it's kind of interesting sounding, gives you the water shield. Red balls give you the fire shield, yellow balls give you the lightning shield, and gray balls with rings give between 5 or 80 rings, depending on how close to the top of the stage you are, which was always something that felt very inconsistent as a child, but now that I know that that's how it works, it actually makes sense. And the gumball machine is basically the exact same thing as the glowing sphere stage, at least in terms of what the items give you. The only real difference is that the gumball machine, the gray balls with rings give you 10 rings universally, and the green balls that say rep on them, which are exclusive to that stage, replace the springs at the bottom that would fall down if you hit them. The bonus stages I don't find too useful. In fact, I generally try to avoid them, as you may have been seeing throughout this playthrough. I only really use them when I want to feel different. And admittedly, my Sonic playthroughs with this game are ones that are very universally the same. I don't really try to branch out from my routes just because I know those routes so well. But I have done other things in the other routes over the years just because there's a lot of times you can accidentally find yourself taking the other route. Let's see, I believe that's Super Emerald number 6? Yes. Now the thing is with how I'm tackling Mushroom Hill in particular, not only am I getting all the Super Emeralds while I'm here, But I'm taking a very specific route that allows me to get all 7 and then get another special ring at the end of the second act so that I can use our very special reward that I already mentioned by name accidentally earlier just because I got it during Sonic's playthrough for the boss fight. Admittedly, though, it's interesting seeing some of these stage portions because just given how I played the game as Knuckles also, there are times in Sonic 3K where I very much just see the Sonic paths as Knuckles. Also, I don't know, I think it's just because of the very particular, like, bass/drum beats this song uses, but out of all the Sonic 3 music, this is definitely the most Genesis-y, because it has that very specific twang to the instruments that everyone talks about. I like the Genesis sound chip, though. I like how kind of metallic it makes a lot of things sound. It's different than, say, the Zelda 2 twang, which feels like someone just bopping the top of something very oddly plastic. Now, this can also be a very interesting special stage, just because to get it perfect, there's a couple of rather unique jumps you have to make. And plus, it's the only thing, I think the only stage off the top of my head that I'm probably forgetting about one of, where you have to outright use the reverse to your advantage. Now, this particular special stage also reminded me of one thing from my childhood. Trix Yogurt. I know it's still out there, but I haven't had Trix Yogurt since late middle school, maybe? Jump right there. That's the way you get yourself a perfect, because that's how you get the most rings out of this. Once you do that, though, you also very much shorten the stage because it's over. That is all 7 Super Emeralds. And similarly to Sonic, we get a new form as Knuckles here. We now have unlocked Hyper Knuckles, which we'll talk about when I first use it, similarly to when I got Super Knuckles. However, notable, if you're playing as Tails, I think I have foreshadowed this back when, I forget exactly how I talked about it, you would get Super Tails, who, aside from needing much more power given the fact he needs the Super Emeralds, has the usual super form stuff. Invincible, can move and fly further, jump higher. However, he also summons 4 flickies that home in on any enemies nearby and do damage. And that makes boss fights a complete non-issue because you can just stand there. It actually kind of reminds me of a certain method of fighting boss fights in Sonic Advance 2, I think? Where you used cream and cheese. Now, let's go get Hyper Knuckles. Thankfully, there's a special ring right here. The thing is about Hyper Knuckles is that you now have an afterimage when you're moving, yes. And while I think you're overall just the same speed as Super Knuckles and such, you have 2 extra abilities. Namely, you can no longer drown underwater. Crushing is the only method of, well, crushing and bottomless pits are the only things that can kill a hyper form. As well, whenever you fly into a wall, it'll cause an earthquake to occur, which kills any enemies on screen. At least I think out of the ones touching any surface. I think the ones that are in air might survive that, but on the whole, very powerful. Also makes bosses a non-issue. Including this boss, who loves to fly backwards, in which case you need to jump over, or under the little poles in the way. Honestly, this guy rarely ever gets a chance to attack, so I'm not exactly sure if he has any attacks that he does during time otherwise. And that's Mushroom Hill finally done. That took a while, and that was a lot of trivia to go over. But with that, I'm going to need to end this off here. Thank you guys for watching, and that's my ears bleeding. And in part 4, we're going to be heading into Flying Battery there, and hopefully causing that sound to stop, because that is absolutely atrocious. See you guys then.